All right, Blaine, you gonna live in this house or what?
Oh well, obviously, yeah. I mean, it's. I feel like I've dreamt about this house.
You already live there in your mind, yes.
Right, exactly. I've been in that house so many times in my own mind.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my fearful, frightful friends, and thank you for coming back for another episode of The Scary Movie Project, the podcast where we talk about, I don't know what else, scary movies. And thank you for joining us for part 2 of Amityville. 50 years since the murders that took place in Amityville. Now, you guys loved the first episode. Of course you did, because Blaine Duncan is here, and he's my Amityville expert, right? He's yours too, because you've seen all his good stuff. So we're going to talk more, but we need to bring more people. More! So we got Marie. Marie plays it all. Marie reviews everything. She's here. You guys love her. You know what? This is great because I have you two now to talk about. I never got to mention this. Marie was the master of ceremonies for the Duncan Brothers hot wing eating contest.
She was. She was. She did a fabulous job. Also, not only did she host that show, but she was a trooper, and she actually did the hot wing challenge with us at the end. It was great.
That is amazing. So it brings a tear to my eye to have all of you with us today for this. It's so great. So, all right, we waste no time on the show. We stopped last episode with we discussed what happened, the actual night. So everything, Amityville is everything about the movies. Everyone knows about that. But, November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo kills his family. We talked extensively about that, right? And we kind of gave a tease for Lutzes. Right now, on this show, we always go off on tangents, and it seems like our tangent becomes Amityville, which, what's wrong with talking about that, quite frankly? But you know what? We don't want to. We've done it before, but I think it's important to go because that's the connecting part of the story, right? So we pick up from that night. Ronald DeFeo goes to prison. He gets charged. He gets 6 consecutive life sentences, I believe it is. I think we mentioned he passed away a couple years ago. Blaine, you always wanted to get an interview with him. I know badly for your piece, and you never did, unfortunately. Right. So fast forward to how many months and years later? Where do we pick up from the Lutzes? Where did they become a story that everyone else, most of the population knows about, right?
Yeah, so the Lutzes moved in 13 months after the actual crime happened. So the crime happened in November 1974. Lutzes move in December of 1975. They have been looking at they talked about looking at 50 different houses on Long Island at that time and trying to find the perfect house for their family, their growing family. George and Kathy had just gotten married in July, so they were newlyweds. Kathy had 3 children from a previous marriage.
Right.
And they found this house in Amityville that they absolutely fell in love with. And after the tour was over, the realtor had them outside. I think they said they were in the garage of the boathouse, and the realtor was like, by the way, in case you didn't know, and I should have maybe told you this beforehand, but this was the house where the DeFeo family was murdered a year ago. And, I guess for me, like I always think, I think, if something like that happened close to where I currently lived, if there were 6 people killed in a house, I feel like I would probably know about that house, maybe a little bit more. I would know where that was and things like that. But I also put myself back in that time 50 years ago. Really, the only news they got was from newspapers and maybe seeing something on the late night news, whatever it might be. It was a different time, so there's a chance that maybe they just really truly didn't realize that was that house. But
were they not living in Amityville though at the time? Weren't they living in Syosset or somewhere else? Was that
Deer Park?
Deer Park, yeah. But it's the same. But it's Long Island. It's the same general area, right? Yeah, yeah. It was like they were living in Indiana or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that was the other thing too, right? I mean, I don't know necessarily how far Deer Park is, but Long Island isn't that big of a place, right? So, but yeah, so they fell in love with the house, made the offer. I think it was for sale for $100,000. They made an offer for $80,000.
The thing. Like the price, I mean, we're talking obviously nowadays. They got the house for, I mean, like a massive steal, like, right? Then they paid almost nothing for this place.
Yeah, it was $80,000. I think it was for sale for $100,000. They paid $80,000 for it. And this is a massive house. I mean, we probably talked about it on the last episode, but you're talking a 2.5-story Dutch colonial. It had 6 different bedrooms, pool in the backyard, boathouse, garage, finished basement. It was a really beautiful house right on the river, which led out to the Atlantic. It's a beautiful house. And but it had this tragedy that had occurred there, so it obviously dropped the price, and they got a good deal on it. They got a hell of a good deal on it.
All right, so here's the question, because my answer is no. Would you have bought this house if you knew these things?
Go ahead.
For 80 grand, yeah, because that house is absolutely a dream. For 100 grand, yeah. I mean, that house, if it was in my city, would probably be like $3 million right now.
So that's what I mean, like relative to today, right?
Yeah, I would, and I think for what it sold for, the last time it was sold, it was like 605,000 or something, which is still super good price for that house. I think I would, because it's not
okay.
I mean, it's not that the murders happened like it was a random person who came into the house and I would be like scared all the time, like, oh, is this going to be? It was like within the family. So I still think I would buy it. It's a dream house of mine, so I think I would for a steal.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, that's a kind of a good point. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it wasn't like a home invasion or something that they were killed. But all right, Blaine, you gonna live in this house or what?
Oh well, obviously, yeah. I mean, it's. I feel like I've dreamt about this house.
You already live there in your mind, yes.
Right, exactly. I've been in that house so many times in my own mind, and you know, so yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you know, I put myself in the shoes of. If it wasn't the Amityville house, if it was just a different house, would that bother me that 6 people were murdered there? Maybe. It's hard to say, right? I mean, it's hard to say. It's I think you know, people have died in houses all over America, right? Or all over the world. It doesn't matter. America, Canada, right? It doesn't matter. People have died all over the place. Especially, you know, in the US, the further east you go, the older parts of the country, it's like, you know, there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
You know, the tragedy of it is obviously the kids that were killed, right? That I think in my mind would be the most difficult part of it is like, you know, do you really want your kids sharing a bedroom with, you know, of a former bedroom where kids were killed in it? I don't know. There was a very similar story that happened near where I live, only 20 or 30 minutes from where I live, where there was a family of 5 that was killed by the dad. And that house was on the market for like 2 years before it finally sold. And it's right on this. It's a really very Amityville-esque, affluent area, very nice house. I think it sold for like $2 million or something when it was all said and done. But I always thought about that. Like, could I live there? I don't know. I guess if the price is right, and it depends on if that stuff doesn't bother you. You know, and as George Lutz says in the Amityville Horror, houses don't have memories. Right?
That's right. That's right.
But do they?
But do they?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
So is this part true? This is what I don't know if this is true. Did they really keep the beds and like the bed frame? I mean, that's disgusting. Like, do they actually sleep in those beds for real?
Yeah, the not the obviously the mattresses.
No.
But yeah, like the headboards. There was a few like Missy Lutz was using Don DeFeo's headboard, which is creepy and weird.
I can't.
But I saw comparison photos of like Lorraine Warren in the bed that she said was the same bed frame, and then they showed pictures of the crime scene, and it wasn't the same bed frame.
Oh, really?
So
who knows?
Lorraine you guys Warren, know, you guys know a lot more. You're way more well versed in the Amityville stuff. I've just been cramming my head with like all these documentaries over the last like week.
Yes.
So I'm like fresh, and I'm like I'm going to have a little more questions, but then I also have these two feelings. I have like a devil and an angel on my shoulder being like, it's this and it's that. So maybe, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm sorry if I make anyone mad.
No. I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay.
And we need to get to the Warrens at some point in this episode.
Oh, yeah. That is on the agenda. All right. So they buy it. Y'all know the story. 20, no pun intended, right? Another great movie. 28 days later, okay, they move out, they haul ass, they leave their stuff, and they're in California, and that's kind of sort of the last we hear from them, right? So, and we all know the deal. George and Kathy passed away X amount of years ago, and Blaine, you've obviously you talked with them, you've met some family, they were all part of your piece, of course. But where does their story, the Lutz story, kind of finally end? Maybe, if that's the right word to put it, and then when does it just become part of folklore and Americana? Sorry, Americana.
I mean, I think there is a gray line there, or a gray area, I should say, where you have what the Lutzes say happened, but then you also have this whole book that gets introduced first, right? The book, The Amityville Horror, comes out in 1977, written by Jay Anson.
Yep.
Yeah, Jay Anson writes this thing. It is based on what the Lutzes did was, so after they moved out, they were asked to basically sit down and sit in front of a tape recorder and record their story. They just talk about everything. And they did
over
that.
some over bottles of wine.
Yeah,
apparently was the
right,
story.
exactly,
Apparently,
right,
yeah.
exactly,
Yeah, so that's
and so
it's
so
all
they
truthful.
did this, right, exactly, and the Lutzes themselves say that they weren't super proud of those tapes because there was some foul language and things that maybe again they were hitting a few, so and who knows what else was going on when they were making those tapes, but they were doing this whole thing, and then the book comes out, and the book is somewhat accurate to what they went through, and they will say that the book is far more accurate to their story than the film was. But then you get the film that comes out in 1979, and that really blurred the line. And I think that's where like the lore of Amityville comes from, right? Because in the film, people see the walls are bleeding, and some of these things, and it's like that never happened. But if you ask anybody, hey, did you ever see the Amityville Horror? Oh yeah, that's that one where like the walls bleed and stuff. It's like, yeah, in the movie, but that didn't actually happen. And then, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but 2005, the remake comes out, and they took it to a completely new level of extreme with some of the stuff that they pulled in that movie. So there is like the story, the black and white story that, whether you believe it's true or not, it's what the Lutzes stuck by while they were alive, and the children have stuck by that story. But then you have this whole other, piece of it that's like, it gets very gray. And what do you want to believe?
I think that's cool because I think what do you want to believe, right? So I think my introduction to the story was through reading stuff in books before I saw any of the movies, I think, right? So I'm gonna get a throwback to any good any spooky stuff fans. Now, if you're watching the video, you'll see this, and you guys will. Anybody remember the Time Life books? Yes. Mysteries of the Unknown. Okay. I have the whole set. Blaine, you might have them. Marie, you might have them. I don't know.
I don't, but I was at a convention like 2 weeks ago, and I saw they had the whole set, and I almost bought it, and I didn't, but I wish I kind of would have. Yeah.
I bought it on eBay like 15 years ago. It's great, right? So I have the one, the hauntings here. They're in great shape. And I mean, look, here you go. Amityville horror hoax, right? A whole 2-page spread about it right here. And that's where I kind of found out about it. When I was a kid, I started reading stuff like that before I even saw the movies. And so that my introduction was the, accounts of what really happened, air quotes,
right,
as opposed to a movie where it takes its liberties and does Hollywood and does whatever it does. But yeah, that's how I heard about it. So now that it becomes part of this, is it the most famous haunted house in the world, in the United States at least? What do you think? Whether it's haunted or not. I mean, it, just what it is, right? I think yes.
I would think so. Yeah, and I mean, at least until, well, no, it still is. And then the Conjuring house now is like second, like runner up.
Good call.
But Amityville I think will always be the most famous one. And I think a big part of it is just its appearance in general. It looks like it has like an actual face, especially with the old windows. So
yeah,
it's like an entity in itself. Even if it's haunted or not, like you can't look at it and it gives you like a chill, Like even in the movie, the house is like its own entity, and it does a whole like red shots, and it's like, oh, the house is menacing in itself. It's not what's in the house; it is the house. And yeah, I would say it's forever going to be the most famous one, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the Conjuring house is the true runner-up, and especially just in the last decade with the films that we've seen. I think the thing that really sets Amityville apart from every other paranormal story or movie that we've ever gotten is it's literally like the OG. It's the original of all of them. It was the first time America was really ever introduced. They had seen The Exorcist come out a few years prior to the Amityville Horror. But this was the first time that we really saw a story like this of people who moved into a house and it was so haunted that they moved out, and it was touted as a true story.
Yeah.
We've had that since. There's been other cases that have come out, but they've never held a candle to the Amityville story because that story just it blew up. It was primed. It was almost like the world wanted or needed that story, as did the horror community, as did whatever, because it was just, it hit on every level and just blew up. The media sensation, the media storm. The Lutzes literally went on a 1-year press tour, even over to the UK and into Japan. Like, it was huge, and the world had never seen anything like Amityville before. And that's why, in my mind, it still holds up, because it built the foundation for everything else that came after it. And we're still seeing these films come out 50 years later, brand new movies, which I know we're going to get into.
So that, like, right place, right time, maybe kind of thing, I might be the right word for it. At least the world was ready for that. So now the world is full of information overload 24 hours a day. It's impossible to consume everything. There's just no way you can do it. True crime is like everyone's favorite thing to listen to, right? It's all they want to do. Are there stories like this happening in the world all the time, and I'm not hearing them, or whatever? Or what? Yeah, again, like, if this happened today, would this be something would it end up having this lasting legacy or something? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think it would do today?
Marie?
I think things like this do. I'm not that big of like a true crime person, but I get too emotional. But I think I think that this happens a lot, and I think we're just so desensitized now about it. We're it's like, oh yeah, another killing, and we also sensationalize everything. So I think that Amityville house would, if it happened back then, people would be like running to be like, I want the house, I want to buy it, because it's like almost like, I live in that house where all the people died, where, they would think it was like a cool thing, like, that in the newspaper, I'm gonna go buy it. So I think that they can't happen again like it did back then.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, the closest thing that I can think of that has even come close to Amityville, and it's nowhere near the level, was back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, something like that. There was the Demon House in Gary, Indiana, that Zach Bagans ended up buying. He bought the house. He did the whole documentary on it. Like, that was probably the closest thing that at least I can think of that we've had in recent years to this. Specifically talking about the haunting, right? I mean, the murder thing is it is what it is. And yeah, like to Marie's point, like, you turn on the news, there's people getting murdered all the time, unfortunately. But I think the closest thing that we've had as far as like a haunting goes is that whole Demon House case. But even that didn't really, it didn't have the same effect that that the Amityville Horror had. And I think, once again, I think the world was a different place in 1975, 1976, or even in 1979 when the movie came out, where people weren't used to this kind of thing. It was taboo to talk about the paranormal around your kitchen table, or talk about the haunted house that was down the street. And now all of a sudden this story is like taking the nation by storm. It was just, I think, much like The Exorcist, where as much as like the Catholic Church and some of the I'll call them, for lack of a better term, like the elders, like the older people, the older community, were like, don't see that movie. This is the devil's work and all this stuff. Like, young people were drawn to it for that reason. They wanted like the anarchy of going to see this movie of The Exorcist. I think you still had a little bit of that holdover that followed the Amityville story as well. It was like people were afraid to talk about this kind of stuff. And then you start talking about demons and Indian burial grounds and all this stuff. And people were just like, young people were drawn to it, and they wanted to see what was going on. And yeah, now it's kind of like, well, you can go watch Netflix. There's 1,000 different movies about haunted houses on Netflix. And but we didn't have it at that time.
Right. That was big, right? It opened the door, right? And then, so that's where you mentioned Zach Bagans, and I think we mentioned Lorraine. That's where I want to kind of jump into, like, paranormal investigators, right? Like, okay, I wasn't around in the 70s, but I don't know, maybe that was I don't think that was really a thing then. I don't really know that it was. But then enter Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are, the husband and wife, paranormal investigator. Was she a medium, was what she always said about it, right? And then so if you guys haven't heard of them, they are the crew that they made the Amityville story famous. They did the Conjuring story, the Enfield poltergeist, any spooky haunting they probably were involved in. So did you, Blaine, ever get to talk to either one of them while you were doing any of this stuff?
I didn't, unfortunately. So I had reached out to Lorraine's, it would be her son-in-law, pretty late in her life. And she unfortunately had dementia pretty bad. And really? She just wasn't granting interviews anymore. So I unfortunately never did.
Okay. Yeah, and she passed away not all that long ago, right? A few years ago,
probably
I think
3 years, maybe something like that. 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
So I mean, that was a big thing. Then they had all these. They had like a live one of the local networks had like a live show with them, right? A seance, And all this stuff starts happening, so then they make their brand, and then paranormal investigation becomes enormous, right? And that brings us to where we are now. Blaine, I know you do some of this, and I guess, I used to watch Ghost Hunters all the time, and that was like my favorite show on Sci-Fi, and now it's huge, and it's like, how much does that stuff now in these shows, like Zach Bagans in them, what do they owe to the story of the Amityville Horror, right? What do they owe for that?
I think
the whole livelihood.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean,
yeah.
Truly. I think there's no question whether you believe the Warrens or you don't. Like, they built paranormal investigators, or they built the foundation for that entire thing. I mean, they really did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true, because again, that was not really a thing back then. And then you had, think about like haunted house movies, right? Like, think about like Poltergeist that comes out in 1982, right? That's a very kind of different, film, but again, it's kind of there. And like, what was the haunted house genre? Okay, like The Haunting, right, of Hill House, the old 50s black and white film, the spooky castle and the cobwebs and stuff. And now it's this house and then I love the idea, though, that we'll touch on this in a second, but how the idea of the film too is kind of like a metaphor for the fear of being a homeowner in general, right? I guess it's just kind of interesting thought. But I mean, yeah, the story itself is just I love it. I love the just folklore and just how it's part of just culture at this point, right? Like, that is something, I showed the book, like it's in this book, or this, any time of year in October, it's a topic of conversation for people. So what about movies? Right, we got to go there. We've talked about it before, but 1979 Amityville Horror, based on Jay Anson's book, James Brolin, Margot Kidder. Now, I don't know, you know the story more than either of us, Blaine. What's your take on that original, and how faithful and whatnot that you feel of that film? And if you ever talk to family members, which you did you ever get their takes on what they think about that? Also, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, the movie is a sore subject for for George and Kathy. It is for the kids. And I've only ever talked to two of the kids, but very, very sore subject. Not as sore of a subject as the remake, because the remake really set them off, because it's just so far-fetched. But yeah, the film was, it's a great scary movie. They did a really good job of making it a scary movie. But the film is very, it's not accurate to what actually happened. Obviously, some parts of it are. The fact that this family moved in, they had the whole house blessing thing with the priest coming in, the priest getting slapped, told to get out. Like, there are aspects of the film that are the way that it happened, but not. There's a good portion of it that is definitely takes some liberties and is definitely fictional. I will say it's again, referencing the remake that came out in 2005. If you compare the two, the 1979 film looks like it's the perfect version of their story, because the 2005 version was so far out there. Even getting names of the DeFeo family wrong, like specifically calling one of the little girls who was murdered Jody, so that fits into the story. Like, I actually just watched the remake last week, and I was just like, it as not only somebody who is very passionate about this story and has researched it a lot, it makes me mad watching what they did and the liberties that they took. So I can't even imagine having lived through that story 49, 50 years ago, and basically watching somebody portray you on the screen and be like, this is not at all how it happened. But now there's this whole new generation of people who are going to see this film for the first time, and they're going to think this is exactly how it happened. I'd be pretty pissed off too.
Marie, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, I rewatched the 1979 one yesterday because I needed to refresh, and I watched the remake a while ago, but from what I can remember, basically the scary aspects of the movie, they incorporate a lot of like the children that were murdered, right, as the ghosts. Like, Jody's not a pig, Jody's like the actual girl they're saying, right?
Right.
The only thing about that I don't like the movie, but I would think about the Amityville house, and if there is any sort of haunting in it, I would think that instead of demons and stuff, it would be that of like the memory or whatever haunting is of the children and the family that was murdered. So I understand why they took that direction, because to me that makes more sense than just demons that are in the house for whatever reason. And they focused more on like the John Ketchum, right? Didn't they in the remake? So they kind of tried to bring in like actual lore, right? They were trying to bring in actual lore. Maybe this is why it's haunted, you know? So I'm not saying it's a good movie, but, and I know it's like very like far removed from the actual story, but if I would think about if that house was actually haunted, it would be for these reasons that the remake did. Not saying it's good. I'm just saying, I understand why they did that.
I agree with that. Like from a filmmaking perspective, much easier to explain why the haunting is occurring by referencing the murders or the murdered victims being what's haunting the house, along with the lore of this John Ketchum character. Like it does make way more sense than having to try to explain that this house was somehow infested by demons or, you know, whatever it might be. That from a filmmaking perspective, much easier to do.
So I've stated it before, and I'll continue it. I prefer the remake. And
really?
I do. I do. I don't know. There's something about it. When I remember when they first was coming out, I got really, really excited. And I think part of it was Platinum Dunes was the company that made it, and they were the ones that did the Chainsaw remake. They did they did a couple of horror film remakes. Some were great, some were not so great. But I again, for someone that loves the story, I think it was a case of we're telling it again. Awesome. More Amityville. I need more, right? And I need it. And I loved like the Ketchum story. I loved that. I thought it was just spookier. I thought the scares were better. Like, you know, the babysitter in the closet was the finger through like her head, like it was gross. And he's, you know, building the caskets and down in the basement and the spray of blood. It was just so gory and graphic. And I don't know. I liked it. I think if you're giving me both, I'll go old school. Here's 2 DVDs or whatever, which one I want to watch on demand. I'm probably going to go with that one. I'm not saying I don't like original because it is the original and it is there and it's spooky and I do love it, but I feel like I have to go with the remake. I don't know. There's just parts of it I really enjoyed. Now, to your point, Lane, like you said, it's unfortunate that it goes off on these tangents and it is not accurate and the names changing and those things like that are not. They did whatever the hell they wanted to basically with it, and it's not a good portrayal of it, but I don't know. It is what it is.
Here's you made me think of this when you were talking about talking about the remake. So I'm just from outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The remake was filmed in Salem, Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's right next door to Minnesota. Yep. I had actually at one time spoken to the owner who owned the house where the remake was filmed.
Really?
And I was going to be able to get into that house, and I ended up having to cancel that trip. But one of the things that I wanted to ask them was, hey, do you guys have anything from the original movie that was, from the remake that was filmed here? Like, is there anything that you'd be willing to sell me or part ways with? And I never did. Well, like 2 years later, and this goes back a few years, right? But like 2 years later, they had basically a yard sale or a garage sale. And for $250, somebody bought the windows from the remake, the facade.
That's it.
$250. And I would have been all over that if I could have
sold those for $25,000.
Right. But if I could have owned those windows, I would have been just, even though I'm not a huge fan of the film.
Oh, hell yes.
Just a piece of horror history and And I actually saw the guy who bought it. It's kind of cool. You can see him there on Instagram. The guy who bought them actually installed them into his house. Like it's his office. So he's got those windows. Yeah. So just a little side story there that I kicked myself.
No, what? That makes me think of something because you can buy all these cool things. Is there a company out there that will build you the Amityville windows and you could buy them? What a wonderful idea. Seriously, I'm not joking.
Probably so. Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
Why? Well, that's a great idea, and charge people whatever the hell you want because people will pay for it. I guarantee it. I guarantee you.
Right. These windows right there. My brother made those for me. He 3D printed those for me.
Those are awesome.
So, yeah. So I'm sure you could do it. I'm sure you could. But
and now, of course, I was at the house a few months ago. I did a stop by there. And, of course, they changed those quite a while. Those rounded windows are gone. They've been gone for quite some time, I think.
Right.
I've seen the house twice, and the first time was 15 years ago, and they were gone back then. So, now, I don't know if we talked about this or not. Has anyone reported anything that has lived there since, any strange from any of the residents since the Lutzes left? I don't think so. Do you know of anything?
None. Nothing. No.
Nothing, right?
I looked it up. I tried, and no, they actually went out of their way to prove that there's nothing wrong with the house, like saying this red room is nothing scary. I used to play in it as a child. This is nothing. It's there. We used to go in it all the time. And the door is still on its hinges. It's the original doors. It's the original banister. Like, leave us alone. This house is fine. The banister did not explode. It's still the original. So they were saying everything's, because people who lived there were getting kind of harassed. They said that people would urinate on their porch and everything on Christmas and stuff like that. Well, yeah. So they were trying to be like, listen, there's nothing wrong with this house. It's not demonic. Like, leave us alone. So I don't think anything has happened. I don't think.
So that's a good example to do my public service announcement that I always do if you're interested in Amityville. If you go to Amityville, do not go on their property. Do not. Stand on the street and take a photo like a regular human being. Do not go. It is private property. Leave them alone. Anyway, that being said, please.
And let me add to that, because I know I mentioned this on the last episode or one of the episodes that we did. If you're in front of that house or anywhere near that house, you are on camera. I can promise you that. You're on camera.
Probably with a very nice camera that probably has a tight shot of your face. Yes.
Yeah, there are lots of cameras around and in that house. Yeah.
Yes. So please, guys, don't do anything crazy. Just if you go, fine, just take a photo on the street, please. But anyway, that being said, that's a good point, though. But I mean, also, again, buying the house, the whole like murder thing in the first place, and then now it's like, okay, the murders happened there, and now this house is famous. Like, why the heck would I buy this place? But I keep seeing it for sale. It goes on sale a lot, right? Doesn't it? I feel like
it has been. It first sold after the Lutzes. It sold in 1977. Sold again in 87. Sold again in 97. Then it sold again in 2010. And then sold again just this last year in 2017 this last time. So it does seem like it's about every 10 years or so the house goes up for sale. So it's interesting. And I mean, all the families that have lived there for the most part have been true like families, meaning like mom, dad, and kids. The owner who bought it in 2010 was a fairly older lady and her husband, big into and actually they owned it when I got into the house. They were the owners, but they were big in the Amityville community, and were members of the Amityville Historical Society. So I think they were kind of drawn to the house for that reason. Like, there was a historical value to them as well. And they're the ones, Marie talked about it, just sold, in 2017 for $600 and whatever $1,000. They paid almost $1 million for it. So they lost a lot of money from 2010 to 2017. But it's one of those things. It is very odd that it seems to have, it sells about every decade. And it's, 2024 right now. We'll see if in 3 years, if the current family that's there is selling. Maybe, hey, should we pool our money together?
You read my mind. What I'm hearing is you want to go in and buy this house altogether as a partnership thing. Okay.
Count me in. Okay. Count me in.
So I always had the idea that I can't afford the house, but no, actually, yes, I can. Because once a month, I'll have a party on a Saturday night where I'll charge you to come in. Right. I'll make my mortgage, essentially, every month by that, and I'll pay for the house. Done.
Exactly.
Oh, you would easily.
Yeah.
You would charge people $100 a head. You would get them in. They would all come. They would show up. I guarantee it.
I actually just read a newspaper article. It's an old newspaper article that came out. I think it was in like 1999 or somewhere around that time. It was right after the house had sold, because it had sold only a couple of years before that to a guy by the name of Brian Wilson, who was not a Beach Boy. Not Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
Not the Manson Brian. Okay, yeah.
Right. But the house had sold, and Peter Imbert, who used to be the mayor of Amityville, actually did a news story. There was an article written where they talked about when the house had sold just a few years before that. They had actually, the town had actually talked about buying it and moving it into the center of town, and turning it basically into like a bed and breakfast. But there were a lot of the, again, the older community, the people who knew the DeFeos and had lived through the tragedy and things like that just shut that down. But the town at one point did consider actually buying it and essentially doing what Salem has done, or Burkittsville, or any of these towns where these stories have happened, and sort of take or Villisca. That's an even better example. Villisca, Iowa, right?
Yeah.
So they had looked into doing something like that. So it would have been really interesting to see that happen.
So that is the question I had. So okay, Blaine, you have now, since you have been to the Michael Myers house in Pasadena, correct?
Right.
It's called the Century House.
Yep.
And remember the whole story with the Myers house? It was literally looking like from the film. It was decrepit and laying on a street corner somewhere. Right. And somebody bought it, and they fixed it, and they moved it to another part of town and repainted it. And it's at the junction of some train tracks, and it's right next door to where the scene where Dr. Loomis is standing and Michael Myers drives by in the station wagon with the hardware store and everything.
Yeah, the Nichols Hardware, yeah.
Nichols Hardware. Oh, well, it's put a couple masks and a rope. What do you think they were up to, right? So anyway, the whole thing with that, though, is that's what I think where you were going with that. Could you see the town taking it, and I think it's office space is what the Myers house now is, right? So could you ever see, now, like where I live, like in Georgetown, Exorcist territory nearby, there's lots of old houses that are historical landmarks, but people live in the houses, they own the houses. So yeah, could that be something one day the town, like you said, maybe does buy it, or they make it a historical landmark and someone just lives there, or do they not, would that be the press maybe they don't want? I don't know, right? I wonder about that.
It's hard to say. I mean, it really, I think, you know, the further away we get from the DeFeo tragedy, I think it becomes more likely. I mean, the Amityville story is not going to go away. We see that new movies come out literally every year with the title Amityville, or Amityville in the title.
Get to that.
Yeah. And so I think the further we get away from the DeFeo tragedy, I think it becomes maybe more likely, but I'm going to probably lean to not going to ever happen, because I think the town really just wants this story to go away. Like, they just do.
It's kind of like you're gonna have to live with it, guys. It's never gonna go away. Like this is never gonna go away. And if they do anything like that, I really hope they wouldn't move it, because of what the property it's on is very important, and like the water and the boathouse, and like that's all part of the story.
Yeah.
So I would hope they wouldn't move it. And if they did turn it into some sort of tourist thing, I would hope that there'd be like some sort of like they'd have to honor the DeFeo people who were,
right,
especially the children who who passed away, instead of just making it solely about like the paranormal stuff that happened. Sorry, Blaine. Like,
right.
No, that's the crux of everything. I mean, that's what we spent the whole last episode, is something horrible really did happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. I just feel bad doing paranormal in quotations because I'm still not sure how I feel about it. But
that's all right. That's okay. All right. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think if you know, kind of drawing it back to the Myers house, the Century house they call it now, it's doesn't have anything to do with like Halloween. There's no association with it, and not that they give tours of that place or anything like that, but. You know, I look at more similar to like the Lizzie Borden house. Like the Lizzie Borden house is a bed and breakfast now.
Yes, it is.
It's much, for lack of a better word, like classier than like the Villisca thing that's going on. And I've been to Villisca. I haven't been to Lizzie Borden.
Have you been to you've been to the Axe Murder house? How is it pretty hokey? Is it pretty corny? I mean, I don't know how I feel about that.
I feel like do you know what this is right here?
I do not.
That's a piece of siding from the Villisca Axe Murder house.
Oh, wow.
I bought this. I did not steal it. I bought it. Okay.
All right,
so everyone's aware.
We're good. We don't break rules on this show. We're good law-abiding citizens, man. We don't do stuff like that.
I have been to Villisca, but I guess my point is that, you know, Villisca is sort of like anything goes. Like there's a sign out in front that's like Villisca Axe Murder House. There's like blood.
They don't care.
No, I mean it's like very you know, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it definitely takes. It doesn't take.
It's like a sideshow, man. Yeah.
It is, and I think the Lizzie Borden house does it. It's a little bit classier. I don't know. I guess that's the only word I can think of, right?
It is, and I don't know. All my trips to New England, I have still never been there. There's too much. I always end up in Salem instead, which is just more fun. But anyway,
right.
But yeah, no, I think Marie, your point, like you said, that's such a good, because forget the paranormal, forget the oozing walls. Kids got killed in this house, like for real. Like that's you know, if anything, I would think they would tear it down before they would ever like make a monument of it. It's kind of thing. I don't know, but I don't know. But I mean, so what did you find out when you were talking to people about, as far as how is the feeling in that town? Or is that something that is still kind of going on a lot, or is it like we're done with this now and we just live our lives?
I think I think you have the older generation who wants nothing to do with it, and then I think you have the younger generation who kind of thinks it's cool. You know, I was just recently, within the last month or so, I was actually talking with somebody who lives in the town and who is very involved in a lot of stuff that goes on in the town. And she grew up in the town, and she remembers driving past it with her parents, the house, you know, driving past the house with her parents growing up. And she talked about growing up watching scary movies and all this good stuff. But she has basically said, like, I think it's great. Like I love the fact she's like, I don't like that obviously people were killed there, but she's like, I think it's great for our town. And she flat out says, I wish they would do something. I wish they'd buy it. So I think you just have very like opposite ends of the spectrum of, you have people who knew the family, lived through the tragedy, and they are just want, they would love it probably if the house was bulldozed, like just be done with it. But then you have this whole other side that's kind of like embracing the story and like our town is really unique and it's known for something that is a little bit, off the wall. But who cares? It's a great, little story for our town to draw people in, and let's take advantage of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it brings tourism in. I mean, it's good for the little economy of Amityville. So I mean, you should be trying to, not milk it, but you should, honor it, embrace it.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it becomes, though. So we talk about it's like first person narrative kind of thing, right? You got folks that are older now, 70s, 80s, that lived through it, and eventually, they will not be with us. But so it becomes that story. So that kind of makes me wonder about the movie of, you have the generational gap of the 1979 original that we've all seen, and then you have the 2005 remake. And to some people, it's like I was thinking about with Texas Chainsaw Massacre in previous episodes, where to some people, I forget the generation is different. To some people, 2003 remake is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for some people. That is it. And I keep forgetting, but it's not. I mean, it's not. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? So, to some people, it's this movie is I think that's so interesting because that's how you look at whatever it means to you. So, yeah, if you're 80 years old, the Amityville thing is get the hell out of here with this stuff. But if you're 25, it's, hey, man, you want to drive by the house this weekend?
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's a weird thing. So, all right. So movie-wise, we got to jump into this now. Okay, here we go. So we talked the original and the remake, fine. I watched part 2 the other day. Again, I hadn't seen it. I like that movie. And now there is some subject matter that I do not care for, that no one cares for in that film, obviously. But it's spooky, right? I love the house. The way it's set back in this big yard, and you approach it in the fog, and the way they shoot it and stuff like that, and it looks really cool. And some of the shots are really the shot going over his head when he's walking with the shotgun, and it follows him. And there's some cool stuff they do in that film, I think. And 3 was weird, and then it just went. I'm pretty sure there's an Amityville Christmas special.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you guys just go now, and we can talk about the nonsense that is the Amityville sequels. Please.
I haven't seen any of them, so tell me about them. I purposely see it, and I'm like, oh god, I just wouldn't watch them. I think there's a found footage one too.
There is.
Yeah. There's Amityville 3D. I know that, right?
Yeah, so Amityville 2 came out, I think it was 1981. Is it 82?
Yeah,
okay,
81,
yeah, they're right. No, you're right, because it came out at the exact same time that Halloween 3 came out, because they were paired together in a lot of theaters. So
nice. I'd go see that.
Which is kind of a cool double feature.
Yeah.
I love the first 3. I love the Amityville Horror. I love Amityville 2, The Possession, and then Amityville 3. And the reason why I like 3 is because I feel like they put a little bit of a realistic spin on it, in the fact that there was this famous haunted house in this town, and this guy was like, this is a bunch of BS. I don't believe it. The house was in the movie, the house is for sale, and he's like, you know what? It's a cheap house. I need a place to live. I don't believe in this crap, so I'm gonna move in. And so I like that aspect of the story, and it just I don't know. I love the first 3. After that, they really start to Amityville 4, I think, is the Evil Escapes or something. It's about a lamp. And then they started getting into a lamp and a mirror
Amityville
and
Dollhouse.
Amityville Dollhouse. Yeah, I mean, it went crazy. And it's anything that could be possessed got possessed, and they made a movie of it,
Sure did.
Outside of the first 3, I typically don't watch them. Watch the remake obviously once in a while, but yeah, there's been a whole variety of movies that have come out about that house. Because here's the thing, Amityville, it's the name of a city. It's royalty free, basically. Yep, you can use Amityville and put anything with it, and Amityville is synonymous now with horror. So if you see a movie that's Amityville, it's like, ooh, what's this? Because it automatically catches your attention and gets your eye, and you're like, okay, well, what is this? But then you get there's Amityville in space. There's Amityville Bigfoot. We talked about it earlier. There's Amityville Vibrator. It's just They have movies like everything that you could possibly think of. They just throw Amityville on it, and
I love it.
Crazy.
Were you serious about Amityville Vibrator?
Yeah, it's for real. It's great. It's great. It's a great film. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I'm serious. It's a real movie. I've never seen it. I definitely don't own the DVD, Blu-ray, and VHS. And
4K.
It's definitely not on my right.
You have
right.
Laserdisc
case 4K.
Right.
Blaine
no,
has
it legit came out a few years ago, and
wow.
I would encourage you to just Google it and look up what the cover of it. It's very interesting. The cover of the film.
Imagine it's interesting.
Yeah, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, Amityville Christmas. I believe. Is there an Amityville Shark movie?
I think there is. There's
a zombie. There's an Amityville zombie.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
I mean, are these just
nonstop.
like people who are grabbing their cams and their audio on a weekend and just like, hey, let's just make this? I mean, they can't be decent films in any possible way. I can't imagine. But
no, the last one that I saw that it was a found footage one, and I don't even remember what it was.
Marie,
called.
have you seen this then?
No, I haven't.
Oh yeah, this one might be right up your alley. I don't know, but they started out and it actually showed like somebody actually took like a handy camcorder out to the real house, and the movie starts out by showing the real house.
That is awesome.
And then and that's why I started watching it, and it's just, but then it like takes a nosedive and it's terrible, and I'd never finished it. But,
right.
But yeah, there's a lot of
I like a lot of them though. Okay.
I looked up the Vibrator cover.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I couldn't resist.
I'll check that out a little later.
It's not as bad as you. It's not as bad as you.
No, it's not. It's just very it's sneaky the way they incorporate things into the cover.
Yeah.
So here's a question I would ask then: if the house were to be sold, would it be sold by Strode Realty?
Ooh, yeah, that would be.
Gotta make a movie about that. Gotta make a movie about that. Yes. Come on.
Amityville Halloween.
Done.
The crossover we all need. Yeah.
We're done.
Yes.
So we can get you guys to dress up, and we'll get some I got some footage of the house. We can use it, and we'll shoot it next weekend. It's done.
Right.
Forget it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll fly out there. Let's go.
See?
Got my passport.
Yep.
So here's the question I want to ask, especially to that Marie. You have not been to Long Island to the house, have you?
No. I haven't gone to like any of these haunted places. One of the saddest things about living in Canada is not being able to go to a lot of the movie sets and a lot of the actual
places.
There's
lots of great movie places in Canada. The Witch, I love that they shot up there. It was beautiful, right?
Yeah, but where is that? Where did they shoot that? Anyway, I'll
it's far away. I don't know.
Just some woods somewhere.
Yeah, some woods. You have to ask. Call Robert Eggers. He'll let you know. But.
Yeah. Well, but like the really famous movie sets and stuff like that. So no, I've never been to Long Island. I've never been to there.
Well, we're gonna have to get you to come do that one of these days.
Yeah,
soon.
that'd be awesome.
So here's the question, right? Amityville is a tourist attraction, whatever I guess you want to say, right? I drove by. I will say when I drove by this time, I didn't see anyone stop and take pictures, and last time I did, but doesn't mean anything. All right, you can name 3 places that you want to go check out that are spooky, haunted, etc. Not film locations, but something in the vein of Amityville that you haven't been yet. Name 3 you want to visit. Go.
Oh shoot. On the spot?
In any country, anywhere in the world, doesn't matter. Anywhere.
Right? Oh, crap.
What do you think?
Oh, this might... I don't know. Blaine, go first.
Spot might
I don't
be tough.
know. This...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on the spot. On the spot, it's hard.
It's got to be places that I've never been.
Yeah, places you haven't been yet. Places you haven't been yet.
I would say the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona would be one.
Oh, okay.
I really want to check that place out. I'd probably add Lizzie Borden to that list. The Lizzie Borden house, that would probably be on there. And then probably I don't know. There's a lot.
I know.
I'm gonna say just for conversation piece, I'm gonna say like Eastern State Penitentiary out in Philly. That would probably be
good Halloween tour. They do.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I haven't been either, and it's right up the road for me. But yeah, I haven't done that. That's a good one. Those are good.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Now you're on the clock, Marie.
Yeah,
I know. Well, the first place that comes to my mind, and it's not even, it could be haunted in a sense. It's just a paranormal place.
A spooky place. Yeah.
First place comes to my mind is Skinwalker Ranch. That's where I want to go.
I like that.
I would love to go to Skinwalker Ranch. Like that's my number one. That's my number one thing.
Okay.
Oh God. I mean, I'm trying to think of the ghost shows I've watched, the places. Ooh, the Island of the Dolls. I don't know where it is.
That's in Mexico, right?
Yes, it's
in
Isn't that
Mexico.
Mexico? Yeah.
It's in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Just to be creeped out by the dolls in general. Like, and just it's such a weird story and a weird thing that's happened.
That would mess me up, I think. I feel like. I'm trying to think. All right, I've been to a lot of I've been to a lot of places I think I really have been lucky that I've gotten to go to. I've been to some really good ones. Now this one, it's creepy. I still haven't been to Loch Ness. I'm dying to just get to and just essentially walk around and drive around the lake for like an entire day.
Right.
Where else, man? Where else would I really want to go? I'm trying to think of too.
Yeah.
And I'm blanking. This is hard, isn't it? Because there's so many.
There's
that's
a lot.
The first one that pops in, that's like the first one that pops in my head would be to go there. I have not been up to the woods in the Pine Barrens where the Jersey Devil's supposed to live. I haven't been up there yet.
That
so
would be cool.
and that's just north of me. You know, all the East Coast stuff I can do. I do want to head up there and do a piece on that one of these days. So that's where I want to probably go. Those are the first that pop in my head, I think, right away. But I think that's just a cool thing because that's just one of those cool little, you know. Amityville at this point is, you know, tourist, whatever you want to say. So, you know, I think we spent, 2 episodes going through all this stuff. I mean, we could literally go on and on and on and on for this stuff. But last thoughts, both you guys, on the movies of them, the story, whatever. What is Amityville doing for you at this point, and what do you think it's going to do? And give me your thoughts. Open floor.
Well, I want to hear first off. I want to hear if Marie thinks that the haunting was real or not. That's what that's
yeah.
What I
we gotta get your insight on that, please.
Oh gosh, it's really hard to say because you hear how there were no voices that Ronnie heard. He said that just so he can get like an insanity plea, whatever they call it. And so that eliminates all of that to me. I just think that was a separate thing and nothing to do with anything demon, or even though his dad was really oddly religious and thought he could like prophesize stuff. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, and the fact that George Lutz was like into witchcraft and that was denied, like the fact that he said he didn't believe in that stuff, but he actually was like kind of really into that type of thing, and like he had to like lie about that because it makes him seem like more credible. I don't know. I don't know, but then you see the interviews with Danny Lutz, and I'm like, oh, he seems really emotional about this, and this seems like maybe it happened, but I don't know. And the Warrens are involved, and then I don't believe anything that they did anymore. After watching The Devil on Trial, I'm just like, nah. So if there was a haunting, to me, it was something. Just that family was haunted. They were bringing it on themselves. I don't think the house is haunted itself. If it is haunted, I would think it was residual energy from the murders. Like I say, houses don't remember things, but I don't know. I think maybe some hauntings are residual energy instead of just actual spirits. So maybe they do, but I kind of don't really believe a lot of the Lutz stuff. I'm sorry. I really don't. But it is creepy that they got up and left. But then I'm like, yeah. And like that they just got up and left all their stuff. That's the one part where I'm like, what, why? But then also it adds a lot more to that's the clincher in the story for everyone is like, why would they do that? So that keeps it like, maybe it's true. So I don't know. I don't think it's haunted.
Okay. There we go.
I think that's good. I think that is, you're in a large part of the majority, I think, that feels that same way.
Yeah. For me, I think, Amityville has been a part of my life since I was 11, 12 years old, maybe even a little bit younger. I don't remember when I first read this little book that I got at a grocery store. I picked it up. It was just this little book on haunted houses. And I was a young kid. So Amityville has been a part of my life for a long time, 25 plus years. And I don't know that I'll ever not be into Amityville. I feel like I have it ebbs and flows where I'll kind of say, you know what, I'm done with it. I've done so much research on it. I've checked that box in my life. I got into the house, which is like the pinnacle for me of all of this. And then all of a sudden there you go. I'll read an article like that, or I'll come across somebody who has a story, and it just kind of like, it just stokes that fire again. And I don't know that I'll ever be totally free of Amityville. Amityville will always have its hands around me. And that's okay. That's just the way that it is. It's like, some people are, I've always attributed, like, some people say, why are you so obsessed with this case? And it's like, well, I mean, obsession is, I guess in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But you look at people, some people are really interested in World War II history, or some people are really interested in
Civil
Titanic
War stuff.
or Civil War.
I love Titanic, dude. That's my joint. Yes.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, those are, like, everybody has their thing, right? Yeah. My thing is Amityville, and it probably always will be.
I love the passion. It's passion. You're passionate about
right.
it. It's part of your being. Like, I love that.
Exactly.
That is really awesome. That is a really good way to put it. Yeah, a buff of every. I love the story of the Titanic, and for me, we're going on a Titanic tangent now. I guess that's all right. There is a memorial down in D.C. not far from me that every April 14th I go visit it. Because I'm like, that's the anniversary. Like, yeah, you're into that stuff. Civil War stuff. People, I mean, my God, Civil War stuff is like, oh, it's amazing the way people get into this stuff, right? Yeah, that's super cool. For me, it's the epitome. It is the haunted house. It is that, and this is it. This is the template. Anything else you ever want to do, it starts and ends with this. And the stories are wonderful, and the rabbit holes you can go down on the internet are just insane, and the movies are crazy, and my appetite's insatiable for it too, right? I can watch it over and over again and listen to it over and over again. And I think I mentioned, the Amityville one, the one that you did is one of the best ones I'd seen. The documentaries. That thing is one of the best in depth, I thought, for me. So I loved it. We go on forever about this. It's great. I think it's so cool. But remembering that at the same time we're talking about something of a real tragedy, we're remembering 50 years ago that people died. And that's like the real deal thing here. And that's something you got to remember that is something awful that did happen. So. And then the stories that come with it obviously go in their own direction. So, but there you go, guys. Amityville at 50. So before we wrap, though, thank you both for coming on. This is lovely. And I hope you enjoyed yourselves. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. And please tell everyone, our listeners, where they can find more about you two beautiful people so they can listen to more things from you.
Sure. First, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and nice to see you again, Blaine.
Likewise. Right.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
No hot wings this time. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry. Next time though. Next time.
Right.
And you can find me. I'm on a podcast, Not a Strong Start, on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all that. And I have my own show on that channel called Marie Plays It All, and I'm also on their other episodes too. So you can find me there.
Yeah, and thanks, Matt, for having me on again. It's always a blast talking with you, and talking about whatever it is, whether it's Halloween or this or whatever it might be. We have a lot in common. So you can. So I have a podcast that I do with my brother called Halloween Lives, and where we kind of talk about everything related to the Halloween franchise and Michael Myers and all that good stuff. So you can check us out at halloween.lives.podcast on Instagram, or follow me at chasing.october86 on Instagram as well.
Fabulous. And you all know, of course, at the Scary Movie Project, Instagram, Facebook. Email us at thescarymovieproject@gmail.com. Tell us more. What do you want to have next? Amityville Super Bowl? I don't know. Amityville, whatever you want. Like, the Super Bowl could be haunted by the ghosts of Amityville. It's a great idea. Let's make it. Why not?
I think the Halloween crossover needs to happen.
Strode Realty.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah. I think it's a good idea. We can definitely shoot it. And, of course, look for us, all three of us, soon. We'll be buying the house, of course, soon. We're going to make that happen.
Right.
But anyway, so Amityville November. Do yourselves a favor, everybody. Let's watch one of the Amityville films. Watch Blaine's documentary. It's wonderful. Please check that out.
Thank you.
And thank you guys again. And until next time, remember, for God's sake, get out!
The Scary Movie Project podcast. Learn more at thescarymovieproject.com.